You're listening to the Nerd to Know Media Network.
And we are live here on the Wrestling Rewind. Of course, Twitch, YouTube events. Thank you, YouTube, for changing the way you stream. And Periscope. Thank you for everyone who is joining us today. We have a fantastic show lined up. We really, really do. So if you guys are watching us on any of those platforms, get in the chat. We'll be able to read it, and we'll be able to get your thoughts on what might be one of my favorite wrestling shows of all time, Dave.
Really?
Oh yeah. Well, this was from this one is I remember when it happened. I remember getting the tape and I remember watching it as a kid. So this thing has a lot of good memories for me. Now it has a lot of filler. A
little bit of filler, actually. Yeah. I enjoyed a lot of the filler.
So I enjoyed this. So I'm going to start this off the way I always do. Did you see this show before, Dave?
No. Today actually was my first time that I have completely watched this show.
Okay.
I don't think I had seen a single match from it.
So another thing, I have notes. All right. So I focused on two things in this. I focused in my favorite signs, and oh my god, this was a signy show. So many signs, right? I have 5 from the beginning of the actual intro. Right, that's how many signs there were.
Wow.
And then I also have a whole section dedicated to Road Dogg, which I will read out dramatically. So look, I had a great time watching this. It was super fun.
Well, speaking of great times, it's a great day for wrestling, everybody. Welcome back to the only show hosted by people that don't hate wrestling.
Because we don't watch modern wrestling.
We watch some.
We watch some.
But we're not going to make the mistake of talking about it first this time.
No,
we're going to cover the review for once.
Exactly. And then, because that's what we're going to do. So we're swapping the days we're doing the show. It's going to be on Thursdays. We just don't know what time. It'll probably be around this time. But we're also going to swap the format where we handle a review of the past show first and then talk about the modern stuff, so we don't get all angry and upset and actually finish the show for the Phoenix FM people, because we always end up going into overtime.
I know. I feel bad for them. They're probably like, what else happened?
Well, they
told us about all the current stuff. Where's the review?
So they should be here, joining us. That's
absolutely.
The thing. So, okay. So So this show was in the 22nd of August, 1999. A totally different world. There was no plague. Everyone was happy. You could travel to America without being upset. Stone Cold Steve Austin was the champion. Triple H was being fantastic. It was a great world. I miss 1999 in a lot of ways, but also it had probably the beginning of the best run of wrestling ever. We were kind of teasing this for a while. This show kicks off a lot. So much that would start affecting the product for probably the next 2 or 3 years. That's why it's so important going back and watching it. So what I'll do is, as we're going through, I'll try to elaborate what came out of this and some of the important stuff that we'd have going forward. But as a show, I enjoyed most of it. I already know the match you don't like. But it had some filler, and a lot more filler than I kind of remembered having. But overall, it was pretty decent. And this came from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Jesse the Body Ventura was the special guest referee, and the enforcer, because he was the governor at this point of Minnesota. So, fair play to him. This had a lot of things in this that went over my head in some ways as a child. When I was watching this again, I'm like, oh, wow, okay. So the way we're going to do this, Dave, we're going to go through it match by match, but we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to talk about the intro show, right? So this was, as I said, a very, very signy pay-per-view. It had more signs than I think I've ever seen and this is saying so for the Attitude Era. So I'm going to read some here, and forgive me for some of the listeners who may be checking this out, but we're past the watershed, so it's fine. So the first one that I wrote down because it made an impact on me. Big Show, fat bastard. Elliot blows sheep. Laura ruined our summer. I'm as hard as the rock. White trash with a sign pointing to himself. And they were all just before the match started.
Just before it started. This
is just as it was panning, and I'm like, what is going on? So, to be fair, I think the two of them were beside people guys weren't wearing shirts. Which
well,
is
let's not judge.
Well, I'm not judging. I'm just saying, this was a different crowd, folks. This was a different time where I'm pretty sure a lot of people were taking substances that, would inhibit your driving ability. So we started off with Jeff Jarrett with Debra and D'Lo Brown. Now, this was important because Debra was more over than Jeff Jarrett, but Jeff Jarrett was super over. And D'Lo Brown was really kind of coming into his own. King on commentary, he was so creepy. It's like, you probably should go see a therapist or get a restraining order, because he kept doing this thing where he'd whistle at Debra for the puppies. And I'm like,
he did.
I'm like, man, please stop doing this. I'm uncomfortable. And it's just like, can we cancel Jerry King Lawler for, now? Obviously I'm being facetious, but it's like,
I don't think you can retroactively do that. I think that's what we actually fight against, Dara.
I know. I this is what I'm saying. Like, it creeped me out, man. It's like, please stop perfing on her. Like, you're going across the line, and yeah, obviously, cancel culture is not a good thing, but damn, King deserves it. He really does, from being a perv. Right? It's so uncomfortable. So when I was watching the show, I was just like, please, just can we not? Like, can you leave her alone? And the worst part about it is, like, the crowd were obviously into it and they were pandering towards it, but they couldn't even hear King. I think if he was going to do something like this, having a live mic would have been better for this to kind of get the crowd going to it. But just for the crowd at home, and because JR isn't biting, it just comes off really, really, like, really sleazy,
Right.
So yeah, it's
a little bit sleazy.
A little bit, yeah. It's something else. But I did love Jeff Jarrett. This is my favorite Jeff Jarrett time, my favorite period with Jeff Jarrett until he goes to TNA.
I gotta tell you, man, he moves around the ring so well, so effectively. He's got a great character.
He's got a great character. Now, okay. Great in the pejorative sense. Like, we don't support his character because his character.
Okay, we can qualify.
Yeah, his character is like an uber heel.
I just mean in the sense that he's really a character. Like, he really embraces it, and we don't always see that. So that's what I like about it.
He goes so full tilt, and remember, like, we'd only have Jeff Jarrett in the WDB for like 2 more months. He's gone after, before November.
Right.
And he's off to WCW to do nothing. But I know he wins championships and stuff, but yeah, didn't matter at that point. 2000 WCW is not something you want to talk about, but
right.
I don't know, man. I think he should have stayed in WWE at this point. What he was doing was so good. It was really over. Like, people were absolutely, they kind of cheered and hated him at the same time. Like, they cheered him so much because he was so over, but then when he was able to turn that uber heel on, Debra really, really helped him doing it. And D'Lo Brown, the pop he got when he brought out Debra, was unbelievable. But what was interesting about this was for the Intercontinental Championship, right? So this is what D'Lo Brown would do, where he'd have the both belts and he'd call himself that, which was a really cool idea. Jeff Jarrett would end up winning both because of basically outside interference from Mark Henry. Mark Henry would end up having he'd end up having the European belt, and there would be that kind of feud back and forward for about like 2 or 3 months. I was not expecting
D'Lo Brown to take that guitar shot. I thought that D'Lo and Mark Henry were on the same side the last pay-per-view I watched.
They were, and that was the point of it. This is
so this was a turn.
Yeah, this was a turn. Yeah, this was Mark Henry's big heel turn. Now it would be undone because he'd become sexual chocolate again, and he'd end up having relations with Mae Young, and they'd give birth to a hand son. That is their son is a hand.
The son is a hand. Yes,
yeah, that's what happened.
I'd be very upset if a hand popped out for me one day.
But that's where this led to. So, a really good way to start the show. Inoffensive, except for King's commentary, and yeah, man, a really fun little. Just gonna get rid of that. Sorry, a really fun way to kick things off. So from there, we had something that I actually kind of forgot was a thing, and this is the tag team turmoil match. Now, I don't remember the last time we had a tag team turmoil match. It's kind of like a scramble or gauntlet match where two teams start off and then they kind of go through. So the teams involved with this were Edge and Christian, the New Brood, Mideon and Viscera. My boy Mideon draws Prince Albert, the Acolytes, and the Holly Cousins. And the Acolytes would end up walking away with this to be the number one contenders for the belts. But this was the first time, or the origin, of the Matt Hardy, Jeff Hardy, and Edge and Christian feud. This was the beginning of it. In earnest. It would amp up all the way to No Mercy 1998, which we'll talk about probably in a couple of weeks. And that's when you get the ladder match. So this kind of throwaway filler match, the impact of it is huge. You get or you start getting a breakaway of the Acolytes. They become the APA because obviously the ministry split up. The Holly Cousins, obviously they end up doing the hardcore thing. Mideon and Viscera become Mideon and Viscera. Andrade and Prince Albert, obviously, what happens with them. So it's it's 16 minutes. It was way longer than I thought it was, but it wasn't anything to write home about. It was more just kind of like a functional match more than anything else. Al Snow defeated the Big Boss Man. Now, before we get to that, there was a promo. One of my favorite all-time promos, Dave.
Oh my gosh. Just the location that Jericho cut this promo from.
So it was on the lines there.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
See, this is what I miss about having physical sets.
Well, not just that. How about the combination there? He's doing it on the Lion's Den, and he was the Lion Tamer, the Lionheart, Chris Jericho. So I even appreciate the whole context of everything.
Fair, yeah. I didn't even realize that. But I loved his promo. His promo was unbelievable. This is my favorite incarnation of Jericho from his debut up until he ends up leaving for a little while and comes back and reinvents himself. This is great, coming out to Road Dogg. I love the fact that Road Dogg just shows up and he's like, hey, I'm going to do commentary because I'm not in this match. So, you never see that nowadays. You never see. Here's one thing that this whole segment says to me. We're watching a show that's alive. We're watching wrestling, but it's not wrestling. We're watching this crazy place where these people have matches for some reason, but there's stuff going on. And that's kind of what the Attitude Era feels like to me. And that's one thing I probably wasn't able to articulate as a kid. And other people maybe at the time because you were caught up in it. But that's what was so fun about it. Stuff was happening and you were getting peeks at it. So everything kind of felt live. Like in this match alone, they go backstage. And instead of nobody being there, there's some random guy on a crutch just walking around. There's like the Blue Meanie and Steven Richards are there. It's a whole thing compared to just, we'll do a backstage segment and nobody's there.
I do miss that. I miss the little cameos of people that you see, even if it was we say NXT now, and that has a whole different connotation to it. But even if it was a developmental talent that we knew was there, but was in OVW or something, and you'd see them backstage, you'd get excited. Or say they were in Philadelphia for filming the show, and I'd see a local talent that they were bringing in as like maybe a dark match jobber or something. I'd be like, I know that person.
But see, that's great because I think WWE, maybe this is it. WWE went from being this sideshow oddity that had matches to being a wrestling promotion.
Okay.
Purely by accident, almost, right?
I see what you're saying.
Where the wrestling took over, but Vince doesn't understand really what wrestling is or what people what they actually want, and maybe that's what the disconnect is. Because
I have a question. Do you think that Vince at some point failed his way into success?
I think so. Because
there are moments during the Attitude Era, and especially what we've been watching, where I'm like, how did they survive? Yeah, and it's like they did the wrong thing, but the wrong thing is what got the attention, and everybody tuned in.
Absolutely, like that's it. And I think the more they went and kind of did the right thing, it started failing because people like this. Like this show, there is not one match on the card that's a technical classic, right? In reality, they're all about 2.5 stars, right? But they're really enjoyable. It's an extremely enjoyable show. And you're just sitting there going, how? Right? And I think that's what it is. I think Vince failed his way into success. Or looked his way into it.
I would not put it past him. And I don't think it's a bad thing either necessarily. It's kind of a funny thing when you think about it. But
absolutely. But now by course correcting to go back to, a more kind of real, pure wrestling content, that's not what people want, because the fun, it's so sterile. All the fun is kind of gone out of it. And even with this redemption thing that we've been seeing, right? It's so lame.
We're talking about current, right?
It's so lame, right? Because like, okay, right. Imagine you did this in the Attitude Era, right? You'd be seeing segments all night. You would probably know who's in it, or you'd see one of the lower tier guys get battered.
Right.
Like, oh, who did that? Right. It would feel like an actual thing. Now it just feels like a segment on a TV show.
I understand completely what you mean. And there's a certain sense of surprise that we've lost because we are in this special situation. So it's kind of hard to sneak somebody in. People have to be tested and everything. So I feel like there's a certain bringing in like a random star or a random celebrity and it's a secret. I don't think that's possible right now. And the Attitude Era thrived on things like that.
Well, not even that. It's more like nothing on the Attitude Era felt like forced. It never felt like it was. It never
not
felt
like the guest, Raw GM of the week like we did.
Yeah, I think it was maybe 2003, 2002 when it started to lose its way. But it's just this weird kind of thing where you're just like, oh, this is it's like Sesame Street or whatever. Whoever came into Sesame Street was on Sesame Street, right?
Okay.
They were just, Mark Hamill shows up, The Rock, they're there, right? And they would it's just the way it is. Now when someone shows up, it's like, what are you doing here? Like, this doesn't feel right, But in the Attitude Era, it felt right. Anyone could show up and it'd just be like, oh, hey, let's go do things. You know what I mean? Because they kind of buy into it and it had that kind of, it's what we talked about, where there's no identity at all. Like, WWE has no identity. In this point, they did. And nothing screams more where they were confident enough to have the set design. They were confident enough to have the stars go out and cut these promos. Everyone, even Road Dogg, like, he just showed up and had probably one of my favorite performances of his career.
Well, and I love that he didn't even do it in the full DX garb.
Yeah, he was just showing
a Tommy Hilfiger shirt, which is so 90s.
and a
90s look.
And a fanny pack.
Well, the fanny pack's a classic. I'll still rock a fanny pack if I can. Yeah.
And I love the fact that he has the microphone. He's he starts off and then goes off and walks around, and he has some great lines. So the promo itself. So let's talk about the promo, right? Let's see. Oh, sorry, some signs I forgot. Jericho is my mum.
Jericho is my mum.
And my favorite sign. And my favorite sign of the night. Put your signs down, clones. So obviously he didn't like signs, this gentleman. So okay. So here's some of my favorite Road Dogg lines from the promo, or just off the night in general. Why don't you shut up, bitch?
I mean, it's wrong. It's so wrong.
It's so
but there's
wrong.
so much of this that I'm going to say. I mean, just wait till we get to the Tori and Ivory segment, and I tell you how much I loved everything about it. So I'm going to let you have this.
Yeah, I'm going to give you that. I was hoping that was the one you were going to talk about. I'm going to give you the floor.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Okay, so that's it.
Okay.
All right, so he finishes the promo, right? So that's how he starts the promo. This is how he finishes it. I'm kind of scared to say this because I'm a little worried you'll take me up on it, but I got 2 words for you. It's so wrong.
It's so wrong.
It's so wrong.
You know, it's so wrong, but it's so right.
Oh yeah, absolutely right. So
right.
Okay, hold on. Oh, and then there's another good line in the match. There's a drunk saying, "Give it to him." I'm not quite sure what he means. It's just like, oh man. So just these these just childish references and like stuff that just couldn't fly now. Like if any of those lines were said, you know, there would be offense across the board, right? And it's like you can't have these funny little moments in wrestling now, and it's kind of a bummer, you know. It's like everyone's so afraid about offending everybody instead of just being like, yeah, it's so silly and ridiculous, but everyone's having fun, you know, and that's kind of what it felt like. But that's the difference. With Road Dogg, I was like, it's funny. With King, you're like, this is morally reprehensible, you know.
Well, because you have the feeling that Road Dogg's playing a character.
Absolutely,
absolutely, yeah. It's different.
Yeah, it's totally different. Like with Road Dogg, you're like,
but King is playing a character, so should we forgive him? I don't
think so, man. Because like last month he was campaigning as being a mayor, so it's like, which is it? Is he real or is he not? You know. But yeah, so I really enjoyed. I thought that was fantastic. But the match itself, this is my favorite Al Snow Big Boss Man match, and that's actually saying something, because these guys have the best hardcore matches. And even
my goodness,
yeah.
Just the start of it. Okay, absolutely. So I don't know why the theme of the night was forklifts. I have no idea. I don't know why they were everywhere, but they were all around the entrance. That's what they went with. And watching Al Snow climb up, and that's not a small drop, by the way.
No, that's a probably big drop.
Yeah, maybe 15 feet. I mean, I don't want to exaggerate and be like 30 feet in the air like JR would, but I mean, a decent 15-foot drop onto no padding whatsoever.
Just on the Boss Man.
He just hides there and waits for the lights to go down and Boss Man to enter. I absolutely love that.
I love the continuity of this match as well, where like, so they fight and then they go proper backstage. They don't even enter. And then Boss Man's like, sorry, Roderick's like, okay, I'm just gonna go and follow them. So he does. And he goes, oh, look at this cool stick I found. And he picks up the nightstick and puts it in his pants and, you know, starts calling the match. And it's like amazing because that's how the match ends, by using the nightstick. And you're like, it's brilliant. You know, it's such a small little touch that if you weren't watching the match, you'd miss a throwaway line. But if you were, you're like, oh, that's where he got the stick from. So they go all over the place. I love it. You know, again, this is my first real experience of it as a kid that I can actually remember watching it live and going, why are they outside during daytime? This is weird. It's 1 a.m, you know, or it was 1 a.m. when this was recorded.
Yeah, that's hot for you.
Yeah. And it was the first time that I can actually remember that happening, like, very clearly, where I'm like, oh yeah, time zones are a thing. So that was cool to kind of see it. And it's weird, like the vibe of this felt like Here Comes the Pain would a couple of years later, you know, the game, where it's like, oh, this is the vibe they were going for. They were just like 6 years too late. But I loved it. It was wild. So my favorite part of it is when they go to the bar.
Going to the bar was great.
They go to the bar, and then there's some lad just standing there in a Black Label Society shirt, and he gives him his chain wallet. But it's the most as someone who wears a chain wallet, this is an obnoxious chain wallet where the chains are this thick.
Oh yeah.
It's like, how are you?
Where it's not really for security, it somehow became a fashion trend in the 90s. I know I never understood it personally. I was we were both. We were young when this was a fashion trend, so it's not something that I bought into. But a couple grades above me is I definitely saw people who dressed like that. The big baggy pants that were jeans, very bizarre.
I remember the big baggy pants that were jeans. That was something that we did actually wear in the early 2000s because, you know, we didn't know better.
You know who was happy about that?
What?
Levi. Because they got to sell so much more denim because people wanted baggy pants.
Yeah.
They cannot be happy in this tight pants era.
No, absolutely not. But the chain wallet, I understand. I do it personally for security because it's very hard to rob a wallet when it's attached to you. But yeah, these were obnoxious chains. It was, it's like, how are your pants just not on the ground the whole time? Like,
listen, if 21 years after the fact, two random guys on the internet are complaining about the chain you had on your wallet, there was an issue with the chain on your wallet. Okay,
there was an issue with your chain. But you know, I did like the fact that they were using. So now these guys could have been plants. Probably a few of them were. I don't think that guy was because he
seemed like there were less plants than usual. Yeah. Like there was one guy on his cell phone who seemed really happy and he was in the way of the camera.
Yeah, he was just like, oh hey, see, that's what I mean. Even if there were plants, the guys there still had a good time. Like obviously there were way too many WWE shirts in a random bar.
That's always a good sign.
But here's the thing. Maybe because it was across the road from the event, so maybe they weren't getting locked. So
it's possible.
You know, that's what I mean though. There was that element of believability where you're like, yeah, they're probably in there having a couple of pints before they go in, because that's what you do in Ireland. You drink before the main band comes on, and then you drink after the main band comes on, and then you drink until you black out. Ireland.
In America, they don't stop drinking while the band's on, just so you know.
Oh yeah, fair. But yeah, I don't know. So that was it. I was like, okay, either these guys are plants or it's real or it's a mix. But I really appreciate that, and I think,
why are we these fans? Why are these fans that are like, oh, maybe they're plants, maybe they're not? Does this affect my enjoyment?
It doesn't affect. It just
ingrained in us, and I hate it.
It just feels more real. Like it feels like an actual like real thing, and that's what I mean. Like WWE at this point, it wasn't the WWE universe. It was just their own little world that was in our world, but it had its own little rules, and it was fun compared to now, where it's like a WWE universe and blah blah. And you're like, all this doesn't feel real. It feels so manufactured. Like it's, you know, two guys can go out and have a match that isn't a match, but they're rolling around on the ground, literally, and hitting each other with like pool balls, and we're loving it. And then you have guys going in who can wrestle like you wouldn't believe, and you don't care. Like that's wild, man. Like it's, you know, I would watch this match any day of the week over any Danny O'Brien match.
Isn't that? I mean, that sounds so crazy to say, but I was so impressed by so much in this match. Like throwing him through the plastic table and watching the plastic table shatter and going, "Oh, that's not gimmicked.
No,
that sucks.
That
you
hurts.
Catch that the wrong way. That's gonna mess you up."
Or even just, you know, the beer bottles where you're like, "Whoa, he's actually cut from that."
Oh, yeah, because you can tell the difference between gimmicked and real beer bottles. Real ones don't break.
Nope.
Do not try and hit your friend with a beer bottle. It's a terrible idea.
Yeah, not a good time. Not a good time.
Is it weird that this was my second favorite match of the night?
Oh man, this is one of my favorite matches of all time.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I loved it.
And that's what I mean.
I don't know. I did.
Yeah, it was great. But that's what I mean. Like they had such a great little formula, and a great moment in time. And I don't know what happened because it's like, you know, it's like Al Snow and Big Boss Man, not the best wrestlers in the world. Two of my favorites, but, you know, not mat technicians by any stretch of imagination. It's a hardcore title match.
Now, you're gonna have to fill me in on something here. Last time I saw Head, she had a spike in her.
Okay, so here's what happened.
I got a little confused.
Okay, so here's what happened in the lore.
Okay.
This is canon, guys. This is canon. What this is, yeah. So Head is gone.
Oh.
Because the spike went through her head, obviously, and that was it, right? Yeah, so Al Snow was the straw, and then he was given this pupper called Pepper.
He got an emotional support animal, is what you're telling me.
He did.
Okay.
And this would set up the Kenneth from Hell match.
So hey, advanced booking.
Exactly.
Even when the matches don't pay off, at least it's advanced.
No, well, it does build to something. This builds.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, even though, and when I say it doesn't pay off, I mean, it's probably one of the worst matches in history that this pays off with, but at least there's a storyline and they build to something out of something as simple as getting a chihuahua.
Well, see, that's it, because everyone has a story. Everything kind of means something. It's not just, let's just randomly book this stuff because we have to, we have to fill time. It was more like, we're going to tell this, at this point, like a 5-month-long story in a feud that is almost a year in the making. And it just so ends with a chihuahua called Pepper. But anyway, so, one of my favorite matches of all time. I loved it. It was great. Go see it.
I really enjoyed it.
Best 8 minutes you'll have watching wrestling. And look, WWE, do this again. Loosen up. Be a bit more loosey-goosey, because it feels more real, right? It's again, I would watch this over any Daniel Bryan match. I would watch this over any Chris Benoit match, any New Japan match, any match period, with the exception of Triple H, because look how upset he gets.
We're listening on the radio. My head has dropped.
It's just like, I know, but what I mean, like, it's one of my favorite matches, and it's just when you go back and watch it, you're like, they don't even get in the ring.
No,
that says it all. They just do not even get in the ring, and you have a man wearing shorts and a fanny pack running around making stupid comments, and it's brilliant, right? So Big Boss Man, sorry, Al Snow is your new hardcore champion.
Yes, he is.
So the floor is yours.
The floor is mine. Well, we don't need to give me the whole floor. Let me tell you, there was a time when women's wrestling used to be great.
Yeah. And then there wasn't for a while, and now there is again.
And now it is again.
Yeah.
Ivory and Tori is a, oh my gosh, I don't want to touch this with a 39 and a half.
Okay. I will try, right? So to set this,
can I tell you what I loved?
Okay. And set the scene, though. You have to set the scene.
Well, the problem is, what I love is the setting of the scene.
All right, go on.
The match itself, I care not that much about. I gotta be honest.
Okay, you're already there. Okay. Go on.
So listen, Ivory taking the pen, the Sharpie, the marker, whatever you want to call it, to Tori. I'm not going to say what she wrote. You guys go and watch this on the network. I like to keep my job.
It's the S word.
Yeah. That shouldn't be shamed. No. Okay, so we've hit that.
We did that.
And on the back is another S word, which rhymes with shank. Okay, we're close enough. You guys have got it.
You guys got it.
Public service announcement. I think it is absolutely abhorrible to do anything to somebody while they are, say, knocked out or drunk at a party, that you would write on them with a pen or anything along those lines. Okay, that's how David feels in real life. Now we're going to talk about how David feels on this podcast. Oh my gosh, it was fantastic to see her degraded and have those words written across her. It was so real. Now, mind you, I'm not saying I want to see somebody degraded. What I'm saying is it actually gave substance to a match that I wouldn't have cared about, because that is what real, mean girls did in high school.
Yeah, that's what they do in college, and exactly.
This is real life.
Particularly,
that's why I loved it.
Particularly at this point in the late 90s. Not so much now.
2020, you'd be canceled and fired from your job.
Absolutely.
In the future, if they found out you ever did this. But this is what was happening in that time period. And this hit me harder than the NWO spray painting people with NWO.
But you know what it felt like?
This really hit me like, oh, this is a personal attack, and I can relate to this because this really does get done to teenage girls or college-age girls.
Well, to put this in context, this was so prevalent that it's actually a video game in The Simpsons. Bart's playing it, and it's like, S word, the hair, so
it's so hard to explain in terms of like modern day context, because I sound like a horrible misogynist if I say I love this. But watching this pay-per-view, let's pretend I watched it at the time and didn't watch it this morning. I love the build up to it this morning. I didn't watch it this morning. We spent way too much time on me lauding this and praising this, but oh my goodness gracious, I loved it. After the match, I loved that Ivory was trying to tear off Tori's top and that Luna came out to make the save, because again, it's that same thing. like the writing on what happened, and this was, you know, in leading up to the match, and then after the match to threatening to pull her top off. And so you're teasing the viewers because we're still going with that Attitude Era like sense, if you will, but
see, this
gets interrupted. I love this. I miss this kind of women's wrestling. And I said it. I do. I miss it.
This was still in a time when evening gown matches were a thing. Bra and panty matches were a thing.
Yeah. This was even before they were in their prime. This was a couple years before they really took off. Yeah.
So, but what I will say is, it's difficult because this was better than what would come a couple of years later with the talent search.
Oh yeah.
Where they were just, you know.
What, do you think I want to watch Kelly versus Alicia Fox, or do I want to watch this? Or do I want to watch this misogynistic degradation that at least has a storyline? And that's the point I'm trying to get across to people. Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, it's not PC. Yeah, it's really totally not acceptable in today's culture. But at that time, it was a fantastic way to build this story, and I'm not going to take away from it because of that.
What I would say is, to that point,
this way too much.
No, what I would say to this as well, like, there's a kiss my ass match on this show too.
Thank you. Perspective.
So,
Thank you.
And it involves The Rock.
Yeah, and Mr. S.
And the King of the Ring winner. So it's like, the women got degraded, so did the men.
Absolutely.
So in a weird kind of way, it was more equality. Because it was more kind of real life than anything else.
Did you just explain away everything I just said? Is saying I love you. You're the best co-host in the world.
But what I mean is, in this time, because honestly,
you're right though. Yeah, absolutely.
What I found more offensive, and I'll be honest with you, was King's commentary earlier on, because it wasn't like he was, you know, it was specifically one-sided. The thing,
right? And it wasn't the females doing it to each other.
Absolutely. It just wasn't. So that's where I'm kind of sitting there going, like, because of the way the booking was handled, it cut both sides. And that's why I didn't really find a problem with it. The next match is a sad one for me.
Oh, really? I love this match.
So did I. But it's the last pay-per-view appearance of Ken Shamrock and Steve Blackman for a while.
It's also the last pay-per-view appearance of the Lions Den.
Of the Lions Den too. So the last appearance of Ken Shamrock, like, period. He'd have one more match with
he had a match in TNA at one point, didn't he?
Oh no, he's still in TNA now.
Yeah.
But I mean, on WWE, he had one more match on SmackDown with Chris Jericho and that was it.
I love Ken Shamrock. I don't think he looks real. He looks like he's CGI'd into the pay-per-view. Like, his body doesn't look real.
Yeah, he does. He has that weird.
Absurd.
But even now, like, he looks unnaturally, like, in shape for, like, his age.
He's absurdly fit.
It's unbelievable. I need to get Ken Shamrock on the podcast. Like,
please, what did you do? Oh, you trained relentlessly your whole life. That's why I don't look at you. Fair enough. I can see how that interview would go, Dara.
No, I'm just like, Ken Shamrock, you're like the best wrestler ever. Like, well, you know, everyone should give you praise. But
and you all thought me talking about how Ted DiBiase smelled was weird. Dara is praising the body of Ken Shamrock.
No, hold on. The body of work.
He had it.
The body of work, shall we say?
That's not you. We can say that, but that's definitely not what you're saying.
Don't try to twist this, Dave.
I just need to get you back from the last segment.
Again, you said that Ted DiBiase smelled good, and you can't live that down.
I mean, I'm comfortable with that. I said it to his face. Hey, I don't say things behind people's faces.
I just can't live that down. But no, what I'm sad about this is because obviously, like, you know, having a childhood hero like Ken Shamrock gone
right
after this was weird for me to try and understand them. Like, wait, he just won that match. Where did he go? And he just disappeared, and then he'd show up on TNA like 4 years later.
Right. What did he do in his life? Did he go back into MMA for a little, or
for a little bit? Yeah, and then he just kind of went off for a while. It was strange. Steve Black.
I never understood the story there because, like you're saying, like Ken Shamrock, especially now, as we've been watching this in sequence. I mean, he's got the look, he's got the moves,
everything, and the build.
Why was he not a world champion? Like, what happened?
I don't know. That's the thing, and that's what I'm kind of like. I really want to find out, because I'm like, everything that he did, particularly with this built up to something. But it was like, once he beat Steve Blackman,
that was it. Now, I will say, whatever those sticks were, not the kendo sticks, but the regular sticks that they grabbed, I thought that was silly.
Yeah, that was.
They did nothing for me. But I love the callback to last year's Lions Den, the 1998 Lions Den match with Owen, when Ken Shamrock jumped off the cage, and not off the side of the cage,
side of it,
and hit the forearm. I love that spot, and this whole match I was waiting for it to happen. So I'm glad that he did that again.
You know what they should do? They should actually bring back a Lions Den or something like it for SummerSlam, because because for 2 years in a row, it was like a tradition, and I think that's again something that modern WWE could learn from. It's like, we have. Because like on SummerSlam so far, with what we've seen, they had like a silly gimmick match, where like a silly stipulation match, and then a Lions Den match, and I think that kind of works. But
well, hey, let's just wait and see what happens with Raw Underground, man. You never know. The Lions Den may make a return.
Raw Underground should do this. That would be cool, honestly. And maybe bring in Steve, because Steve, obviously Ken Shamrock is in TNA, but if you bring in Steve Blackman,
I'm sure those contracts are ironclad.
But if you bring in Steve Blackman, imagine that if he was like the GM of Raw Underground.
I think Shane's got that locked down, doesn't he?
Yeah, but he could, you'd be like, here's our special guest enforcer or something like that. Imagine a pop. That would be cool, man. Yeah. That would be cool.
So I absolutely love this match as well, and I'm glad that you did.
One thing that as well, this is like the origin of the kendo stick.
Oh, really? Well,
in WWE.
And Shane had used one earlier in the night on Test, so it was weird to see so much kendo stick action.
But this is it. It's because Steve Blackman started bringing in the weapons. Like, Steve Blackman would then bring it with him to the hardcore division.
Right. I associate kendo sticks with Steve Blackman first and foremost.
But even to this day, like, kendo sticks are still used, and they was like, why are you using kendo sticks in wrestling? And this is why. It's from like this period. It's actually unbelievable that like 21 years later, there's still the impacts of this time period is still being felt. It's unbelievable.
Because when you think about it, honestly, why are kendo sticks used in professional wrestling?
Doesn't make any sense.
It makes no sense.
But then when you go back, you're like, oh yeah, there were two martial artists who really like kendo sticks. I know people say, oh, but what about Sandman? It's like, yeah, but that's not WWE. That's ECW, right? Obviously they stole them, but it still wasn't the same thing.
Can you steal what you technically own?
That's fair. That's a fair point too. Okay, so the next match I watched twice today.
It was my favorite match of the night.
It's magnificent. It genuinely is magnificent.
I can't believe we're agreeing on the matches tonight. I'm kind of shocked.
I forgot Shane did a corkscrew moonsault.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my God, where did he learn that? And it was done perfectly. It's like, that's unbelievable.
What's crazy is that we're only a year out from Shane hitting a shooting star press at WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. Like he had, and I'm talking in current times, like he did that last year. Yeah. And it was beautiful. Yeah. I mean, he didn't connect with it. The guy rolled out of the way, but still, just the fact that he can still pull that off. So to see a young Shane, to see what he was doing,
man. I mean, I'm telling you, dude,
that corkscrew moonsault was beautiful. The way that signature elbow off the turnbuckle to the commentator on the outside. Oh,
first time he did it.
This is the first time he did it.
Yeah, you're gonna love what's coming. The best of Shane McMahon is coming now.
Listen, I love Shane McMahon. I don't care what anybody says because you've seen him in recent years. He has always been one of my favorite wrestling characters. And if you think I'm in some weird class of my own that feels that way, go on YouTube, look up Shane McMahon returns to WWE, and you will find one of the loudest ovations in the history of the company.
Well, answer me this. Have you seen his work from 2000 to 2001?
Just his work with Kurt Angle.
Right. You are in for a great time.
Yeah.
Because, that's what I mean. Like, this is the best period of wrestling.
I'm so excited because I've gotten so seeing these guys, and I don't want to jump ahead to the next match while I'm still talking, but I'm just going to mention them, like Big Show and Undertaker and Kane and Billy Gunn and Shane and all these guys, JBL, that I would see later in the mid 2000s and go, all right, they're okay. But I had missed this portion of 1999 where these guys were coming into their own and they were on fire.
Absolutely.
And they could move around the ring so nimbly. And that's what gets me. What
I love about this match as well is just, like, again, it's Shane is still kind of finding his way. You know, this is a good kind of test for, no pun intended, for what would kind of come. Like his signature match would be this, basically, in different ways with different people. Mm-hmm. But some of the spots in are great. Obviously, you mentioned the elbow.
Which is now his signature thing. I mean, he did it off the Hell in a Cell, I think, last year.
But there's a nasty spot where he hits Test with the picture of the Main Street Posse.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like, that
was nasty. And I could not tell for the life of me if that was, I'm going to break in the kayfabe wall here for a second, guys. I could not tell for the life of me if that was a legitimate glass frame or if that was candy glass like we usually use.
But even if it was, it's still, you know, the signs.
I mean, the sound effect was great. If that was candy glass, the sound was perfect. It shattered perfectly. I
love the Main Street Posse being there too. Like I don't think you've experienced the Main Street Posse either.
This is my first time actually seeing them on a pay-per-view because they haven't been in a couple. I know of them, obviously. I mean, Pete Gas, how can you not know who he is? But
they're great. They're so good.
I love the reemergence of the Stooges.
Yeah, the Stooges great. Yeah,
I don't mind a screwy finish with Shane McMahon matches. I expect them, but I do have an issue here. Okay, it's the concept of this match. Right now, we've talked about why the match itself is fantastic. I don't see myself wrestling a match because I don't want my sister to date a guy. Okay, that seems a bit odd. Now, if perhaps I'm interested in a female and another guy is, and we have a match to determine who gets to date her, or she becomes our manager as they would do in later years, that's a bit more believable to me. But the stipulation being, if Shane wins, he's got to stay out of Stephanie's love life. I was like, what?
And this is one of the shows where Heat is directly involved in it. That's when this match was made, which again, we talked about.
Yes, they got to link Heat.
With the
when you click on these pay-per-views, man,
absolutely,
got to go into the user interface, man.
Yeah, look,
that wasn't weird to you, man, because it struck me as kind of odd. Like Shane either leaves him alone, or his sister gets to sleep with this wrestler. Like what?
It was, but I grew up with it, so I accepted it. I accepted it 21 years ago as just being the way it was.
Well, let's talk about. I've already dug myself a big enough hole, so I'm just going to say, let's talk about 21 years ago. I get the love for Stephanie McMahon now.
Right.
That's all I need to say.
Right. I'm just like, yeah, she would like, and I think about it is at that point as well, she was like, if you didn't have a crush on Stephanie McMahon, like, I don't know.
I had no idea the crowd loved her that much.
Yeah, she was
used to this authority heel, older woman stuff.
Here's the thing though, right? She was like the sweetheart of the WWE, right? And when she turns,
was the new Miss Elizabeth, basically.
And when she turns heel, which we'll see, people go mad. So we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
I'm excited.
It's one of the best heel turns ever.
I'm going to try out my English terminology here. She was a cute dame back in the day.
She sure was. Yeah, man. Triple H was really lucky, and this is when they weren't dating yet in real life.
No. But unfortunately, he would introduce her to all sorts of supplements, and she would work out and lose that baby face and start being all oddly muscular.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Am I critiquing somebody? This sounds weird. I love you, Stephanie McMahon. I love everything you've done. Congratulations on your Body and Fitness cover magazine. I appreciate it.
Look, I love Stephanie McMahon too. Triple H can make no wrong. Love her. Can make no wrong decision.
That's what it comes back to for you. Okay.
No, just in general. That's just the way it is. But okay, so we had what for me was the worst match of the night because, and here's the thing: Undertaker was injured, man.
Okay.
Undertaker was injured.
This was weird. The whole thing felt weird, discombobulated. Well, didn't flow.
Because they couldn't go.
Well, this was basically Saudi Arabia 20 years beforehand. With Kane and the Undertaker. And in terms of like not being able to perform up to the level that you would expect to see Taker perform.
Yeah, like it was. He was injured. Like he'd be gone after this, which is weird when they put the belts on him. It was like, why did he put the belts on him?
I actually liked Kane and X-Pac as a tag team. It reminded me of Kane and RVD, 4 or 5 years later.
This was his first face run as well. That's when he had the black and red. That's when That's his face.
Oh, and this was my exposure to Kane talking with the mouthpiece. That was cool. I understand why it was over.
Yep, it was super over. So it's kind of weird to go back because like these were like big cornerstone. Like Livewire was the big thing that you watch on a Saturday morning at like 11 o'clock. And they would usually focus on three things: whatever Kane was doing, whatever Austin was doing, and Stephanie McMahon.
Interesting.
And that's how they'd package basically the show to you around this time. So, you know, yeah, it was super over.
Interesting.
But look, it sucked. It was not a good match. Yeah.
No. I mean, I thought X-Pac looked great.
Oh yeah,
he throws the best. When he was in his prime, he threw the best spinning heel kick out of anybody.
Absolutely. That's
my personal opinion. So
absolutely.
I guess up next we had this weird match that I just did not get.
I like The Rock's promo. I thought The Rock's promo was great at the beginning of the pay-per-view. Yeah, so this kind of goes back to Billy Gunn winning the King of the Ring.
Right.
And The Rock kind of just being, you know, needing something to do. He was the de facto next big star, but it was The Rock and Austin. It was Triple H and Austin that were there in his way. So basically, once Austin gets injured, which he actually is injured now, that's why he lost the belt. So yeah, it's like a lot of these guys are injured. So this is kind of like the crossover period before we start getting the new stars. So yeah, it was time. It was filler, but it was good filler.
It was. I don't have too much to comment on. Honestly, I kind of watched this one the same way. I don't even know if we talked about the tag team turmoil nonsense. Did we talk about that? And I blanked out.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
We did. Okay. Yeah. Well, apparently I missed it because literally that's how little I cared about it. There were like 7 tag teams in this thing, and nothing for me. And that's how I felt about The Rock versus Billy Gunn. It was 10 minutes on my TV screen, and it was over. I got a question. Why did this work for Billy Gunn and fail for Ken Anderson?
Heyman.
Heyman? Did you say Heyman?
No, I said how do you mean? How do you mean?
How do I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, well, when Mr. Anderson, that was his name, when he went to TNA, he did the whole like I'm an asshole gimmick, and it didn't work. But for Billy Gunn, people loved him. People loved this gimmick, or loved to hate it at times. But I mean, it got a great reaction. Where Ken Anderson, it just was like, all right, after 2 years of listening to you tell us that you're an asshole, we get it. We don't care anymore.
I think they loved it until they loved this gimmick up until they didn't, and the Rock basically buries this almost completely dead.
Well, it does get buried, but I'm saying I feel like it worked better for Billy Gunn than it would work 16 years later for Mr. Kennedy / Mr. Anderson.
But I think there's a difference between saying you're a lover of asses and a asshole.
Well, I don't know. You can put a comma in the theme song, and you're calling yourself an ass man, right? I mean, that you could decipher it that way.
That's fair.
Okay.
But yeah, look, this was filler. For me, the pay-per-view was over with the Greenwich Street fight. And
it was.
So what do you think of the main event?
It happened.
Yeah.
You know what? Okay, here's what I thought of it. I love Jesse Ventura.
Yes.
I hate that he doesn't get along with Vince McMahon, so we don't get to see him in WWE anymore, really. And also, he's got his own grievances with him. I think he's been trying to set up a union for a while, which is the reason he's not really welcome back in WWE, which is hysterical. Also, he spends half of the year down in Mexico on his cannabis farm, so there's that. But point being, I just think that Governor Jesse Ventura being, a guest referee at this match, I just loved it all. I mean, obviously he wasn't governor at the time, but he
was governor at the time.
Oh, he was at the time. Oh, this was during his presidential run. Was Trump on the ticket with him in 2000?
I'm not too sure, but at this point he was,
because he was running as an independent after he was done governor. I'm now talking crazy U.S. politics. People are gonna be like, "Why'd you bring him up?" So I'm just gonna skip over it, but I'm gonna look up that card while we're doing this.
Yeah, at this point he was the governor. But what do you think? Obviously Austin had to drop the belt because he was injured, so that's why Mankind pinned Austin, and that was it. So then the very next night we'd have Triple H win his first title against the Mankind, and it would set up the rest of the year. But so that's what would you give the show overall, Dave?
There was so much I loved about it that overall, I have to give it a B, because I didn't think the last two matches performed up to par, and you kind of. But there's an old Mitch Hedberg joke about how comedy can't be like pancakes. I'm going to say it this way too: that wrestling can't be like pancakes. All great at first, and you hate them by the time you're finished with them. Like that. That's kind of how I felt about this show. It was great at first, and then not so great. Not so great. And
I think because of how good the Test Shane McMahon match was, everyone was kind of done by the end of it. But a fun show, I would say. If you haven't seen it, it's definitely one of the best pay-per-views you can see from start to finish, but it teeters off there near the end.
Did you mind Mankind winning?
No, I thought it was great. As a kid, I was very upset, but now it makes sense.
You were very upset.
Yeah,
all that.
Yeah. It makes sense now, and in 21 years later, I'm kind of happy that he got that transitional run, and then what they do with it the night after is really good too. So we'll talk about that maybe when we're looking at Unforgiven 1999. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Rewind, guys, because we've almost run out of time here on Phoenix 92.5 FM. So, Dave, is there anything you want to plug before we wrap up?
Yes, absolutely. I desperately need you all to save Dave. I need followers on Twitter. Okay. My hashtag, it's @TheDaveStevens. Please follow me. Please, I beg you. I'm going to drop under 500.
Follow Dave, exactly.
Follow me. Save Dave.
So, guys, you can go over to Nerd to Know Media and get all of our shows there, all our content. We do show every single day of the week. We will kind of iron out our times now going forward. But thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week here on Phoenix 92.5 FM, The Wrestling Rewind, and the True Penny Channel. Bye, guys.
Join us at nerdtoknowmedia.com.